How humans learned to control fire. What if I told you that everything you consider civilization, cities, cooked breakfasts, the fact that your brain is even large enough to read this sentence traces back to one single moment. A moment nobody recorded, nobody named, and nobody even realized was history in the making. A moment when some nameless ancestor of yours sat by a smoldering branch, struck by lightning or spat out by a volcano, and instead of running away in terror, leaned in. That's the story of fire. And it's stranger, slower, and more brutal than you think. Let's start with the myth you probably grew up with. The one where a caveman rubs two sticks together, sparks fly, and boom, instant fire, instant progress. That image is comforting. It's also almost certainly wrong, or at least wildly incomplete. The real story isn't a single aha moment. It's a relationship that took hundreds of thousands of years to build, one clumsy, dangerous step at a time. Picture the world before fire was ours. Lightning strikes a dry forest. Lava creeps through underbrush. Fire happens constantly in nature. It always has. For millions of years, every animal on Earth, including our ancestors, had exactly one relationship with fire: fear it, flee it, never look back. Fire meant death. It meant your territory burning, your food scattered, predators driven mad and dangerous. So somewhere, at some point, something changed. And here's the first twist. Scientists think the very first stage wasn't making fire at all. It was tolerating it. Then, scavenging it. Imagine early hominins picking through a scorched landscape after a wildfire had passed. The ground is warm. Smoke still hangs in the air. And there, they find something valuable. Animals that didn't escape the flames. Roasted, already cooked. Easier to chew, easier to digest, and, though they couldn't have known this, packed with more usable calories than raw meat. That's not a campfire story. That's a survival strategy. Free food, already prepared by nature itself. This is where the science gets genuinely wild. Some researchers argue that this accidental, opportunistic use of wildfire byproducts may go back over 1 million years, long before anyone could reliably start a flame from scratch. Sites in Africa show burned bone and ash layers that hint at hominins interacting with fire far earlier than we once assumed. Not controlling it yet, just using what fire left behind. Some of the most tantalizing evidence comes from a place called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where researchers found burned bone and ashed plant material deep inside the cave, in layers roughly 1 million years old. The key detail is where it was found. Deep inside a cave, wind and lightning simply don't reach. For a fire to burn that far from the entrance, something had to carry it there and feed it. Another site, in what is now Israel, preserves traces of repeated fire use in specific spots going back hundreds of thousands of years. The burned flint clustered, as if there were a designated place for the flame, returned to again and again. But scavenging cooked meat after a wildfire is one thing. Keeping a fire alive is something else entirely. That's stage 2, and it might be the most underrated skill in human history: tending. Once early humans realized fire had value, warmth at night, protection from predators, meat that didn't require a full day of chewing, the real challenge became keeping that flame from dying. No matches, no lighters, no sticks and friction trick reliably working on command. Just a burning branch, carried, fed, guarded, generation after generation. Anthropologists studying some of the oldest hearths controlled ash deposits in caves that show repeated, contained burning in the same spot over time, suggests this kind of firekeeping was happening at least several 100,000 years ago, possibly longer. Some contested evidence pushes toward 1 million years. Think about what that actually means logistically. You don't just keep a fire going. Somebody has to feed it constantly. Somebody has to protect it from rain. Somebody has to make sure it doesn't consume the very shelter you're using it to protect. This required something animals don't typically have: long-term planning, division of labor, and trust. A tribe that could keep fire alive needed people assigned to watch it. At night, every night, for years. That's not a spark of genius. That's a societal structure forming around a flame. And once fire became reliable, even semi-reliable, everything downstream of it started to change. Here's the part that should blow your mind. Cooking might have reshaped the human body itself. There's a compelling scientific hypothesis, sometimes called the cooking hypothesis. That argues our ancestors' brains ballooned in size partly because cooked food delivers dramatically more digestible energy than raw food. Chewing raw meat and fibrous plants for hours a day, the way chimpanzees still do, burns enormous time and energy just on digestion. Cooking is essentially pre-digestion. It breaks down proteins, softens starches, kills parasites, and unlocks calories that would otherwise pass through the body, mostly wasted. The researcher most associated with this idea points to a startling comparison. A great ape, like a gorilla or a chimpanzee, can spend 6 hours or more of its day simply chewing. 6 hours. Just processing raw food with brute jaw power. Modern humans, by contrast, spend only a small fraction of that. Cooking essentially outsourced part of our digestion to the fire, freeing up an enormous amount of time and energy. Time that could suddenly be spent hunting, socializing, making tools, or simply keeping a large and hungry brain running. More usable calories meant bodies could afford to grow a more expensive organ, the brain, which burns a staggering share of our daily energy even at rest. Smaller guts, because less brute digestion was needed. Bigger brains, because more fuel was available. Some researchers even tie the timing of these anatomical shifts to the growing presence of fire in the archaeological record. It's still debated fiercely. This isn't settled science, and not everyone agrees on the timeline, but the logic is hard to ignore. Master fire, and you may quite literally rewire the future of your species. Now let's talk about the leap from tending fire to actually making it. Because this is where humans stopped being dependent on luck. At some point, likely tens of thousands of years ago, maybe earlier, someone figured out that friction between two pieces of wood, done fast enough and long enough, could generate an ember. Someone else, or maybe the same clever mind, discovered that striking certain stones together threw sparks capable of catching dry tinder. Fire drills, bow drills, flint and pyrite, different cultures, different continents, converging independently on the same basic physics, concentrate enough energy in one small spot, and you can conjure flame from nothing but wood, stone, and effort. This changed the power balance of survival completely. A group that could only tend fire was hostage to it, lose the flame, and you might go without for days, weeks, desperately searching for another wildfire or another tribe willing to share an ember. But a group that could make fire on command was suddenly independent. They could migrate into colder climates. They could cross regions with no existing fire to borrow. They could recover instantly from disaster. And that single capability, portable, on-demand fire, is arguably what allowed humans to spread into environments that should have been lethal. Ice-age tundras, mountain passes, regions where the temperature at night could kill an unprotected human within hours. Fire became armor against geography itself. It also transformed the night. For nearly all of animal history, darkness meant vulnerability. Predators see better than you, and staying still and silent was the only defense. Fire flipped that. Suddenly, humans could push back the dark. Groups could gather after sunset, not to hide, but to talk. Some researchers argue that firelight gatherings might have been where storytelling, early language complexity, and social bonding really flourished. Not during the busy, task-filled daylight hours, but in the flickering, relaxed hours around a fire, when there was nothing to do but talk, teach, and connect. If that's true, then fire didn't just cook our food and warm our bodies. It may have built the social glue of early human culture. And then there's the technology fire unlocked that had nothing to do with eating or warmth at all. Hardened wooden spear tips, fire treated for extra strength. Clay discovered to transform permanently when baked at high heat. The birth of pottery. Eventually, thousands of years later, the ability to smelt metal, an achievement completely impossible without controlled, sustained, high-temperature fire. Bronze, iron, every blade, every tool, every engine part in human history traces its lineage back to that first group of hominins who refused to run from the flames. So when you really sit with it, fire isn't just one invention among many. It's the foundation invention. Without it, there's no cooking. And without cooking, some scientists argue, there may be no human-sized brain. Without fire, there's no protection from nighttime predators, no expansion into freezing climates, no pottery, no metalworking, no forges, no engines, no rockets. The entire staircase of human technological history has fire as its bottom step. And it started with fear, with animals fleeing flame for millions of years, until one small, vulnerable, clever species did something almost nothing else in the animal kingdom has ever done. It looked at the most dangerous force in nature, and instead of running, it decided to make a deal with it. That deal is still running today. Every stove in your kitchen, every engine under a car hood, every power plant lighting up a city at night, it's all just an echo of that first ember, carried by hands that had no idea they were about to change the future of an entire species forever.